I'm Jay.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, for our final review of this reviewing session we're doing tonight, we're going to do British Sea Power's latest album, Machineries of Joy. Now, in 2011, we reviewed British Sea Power's new album, which came out in like January 2011, so it feels like a long time ago, but it was really just over 2 years. That album was Valhalla Dance Hall. Now, Tom, we liked that album. It was a bit more aggressive, a bit more expansive in sound, and I remember that, you know, just coming into the year, it was a good rock album to kick the year off, so we were kind of behind it. Now, Machineries of Joy doesn't rock out and isn't quite as aggressive as Valhalla Dance Hall was. Now, if you've been listening to British Sea Power since their beginning, way back when, from their album Decline of British Sea Power, which is actually the album that I am most familiar with, and then Valhalla, and then I kind of skipped a few albums, and then Valhalla Dance Hall, now Machineries of Joy. It's cool to see how this band has grown as songwriters, because I really feel like Machineries of Joy puts an emphasis on songwriting on each track.
Definitely.
I think that starting off with the opener, the self-titled opener, you really get a sense that these guys are very focused about the competition, the composition that they are creating, where they're you know, creating these lush guitar, and they incorporate other instruments too, as well as strings and horns into their mix. I know, you know, a track pick of both of ours, track 6, Monsters of Sunderland, brings in these nice horns that kind of gives a colorful sound.
Yeah.
Tom, what was your take on Machineries of Joy?
Yeah, well, first off, I got to agree with you. This sound is just it's thick throughout. They have a lot of things going on, a lot of those subtleties in the mix. You almost forget that they're just kind of a traditional rock band.
Right.
Which is obviously what they were going for, or else they wouldn't have done it that way. I mean, come on. But this was an interesting experience for me, because this is just a band that I find myself I have difficulty really caring about what they're doing. And it's hard to identify. And that's why I was actually really excited to review this album, because I was able to learn about myself, and I did a lot of soul searching, and you and I talked about it. It was like we were both on the psychiatrist's chair, just figuring out what is it about this album that's good and what's bad.
It's the best part about listening to music, is you get to learn a lot about yourself, too.
Totally. So what I'm excited to talk about in regards to this album is that, first off, get this out of the way, it is a good album. We'll say some bad things about it, but we liked it overall. But what's really interesting is that I can't fault the songwriting hardly at all.
No, you can't. It almost reminds me of Arcade Fire level songwriting.
Yeah.
At some points, especially with their inclusion of like strings, and how they weave these guitars together and build these climaxes into the songs. I mean, I really feel like these guys are at the top of their game as far as songwriting is concerned.
Yeah, when it comes to the compositions, not only instrumentally, but the melody construction, the song structures, they're very interesting, very engaging, lots of good dynamics.
Right.
And so I found myself thinking, well, what is it? Why is it that I'm just not completely gripped by this album? Because from a logical standpoint, they're doing so many things right. And then I kind of realized, well, for me, it kind of falls short in a lot of other aspects. And that's including performance, albumization. Those are the two big ones. A little bit production. The production's not too bad, but I felt like for those dynamic highs, when they're really rocking out, I'm not quite getting enough guitar. You've mentioned not quite getting enough low end in the bass.
That was big on my wish list.
Yeah, it's not really all that booming. Now, I gotta say, when it comes to British rock, they've never really been all about huge, chunky guitars and low end.
But you know, at the same
still,
time, it's 2013. I mean, rock bands with nice bass and you know, bass drum hits. You know, when you hear that low end in the sound, it gives it more power and emphasizes the dynamics that are present. So I feel like the mixing could have been better, and kind of the lack of having that low end exacerbated the lack of dynamics that you did hear throughout the album in the mix. So.
And moving forward, then, as long as we've talked about the production there, I want to get back to what I mentioned about the dynamics and albumization, because that's really kind of what killed it for me. Because these songs on a track-by-track basis are pretty good, but I felt like there was no flow or no higher level thinking about the overall album.
Yeah.
When I listen to this, especially in tracks 2 to 3, K-Hole to Hail Holy Queen. Both are fine songs on their own.
Yeah, I actually really like Hail Holy Queen.
Yeah, but when they go from one to the next, Hail Holy Queen is this very kind of somber, beautiful arrangement.
Lush.
Yes, with you know, the different vocals, and then, you know, coming from that out of K-Hole, which is a more upbeat rocker. There's nothing to transition the two into each other. They don't really make sense next to each other. It's like they just took these two songs and just slapped them together.
And I really think that's something that they did throughout the album.
Yeah.
This really feels like they created, you know, 10 good songs and then just plopped them on the album as a compilation. And if you guys have watched Velocities of Music before, you know that Tom and I are all about the listening experience. We're all about the flow between the songs, how the songs are arranged. So we really do analyze everything here, and what can make or break a good album listen is just a compilation where there's just no care in taking when in arranging the songs.
And that doesn't mean that every album has to be Dark Side of the Moon, where the whole thing pretty much sounds like one track, but it just means we liked to see some forethought in how these are arranged, and I feel like I don't really get that here. I have to put myself in the mindset of, okay, what would I have done differently arranging these tracks, and I feel like you could have put them in an order that would make them work together more and create more of an experience. Now, moving from there, also I have to fault the performances a little bit, especially in the vocals, because I just feel like they never really have that conviction that really sucks me in. We talk a lot about believability, and we feel like if we don't get the impression that a vocalist really believes what he or she is singing about, then why are we going to care? Why are we going to believe it? And he didn't quite sell it for me.
Yeah, he's very dramatic at times.
Yeah.
And I feel like for sometimes it's without just cause. I kind of feel like British Sea Power comes off as the band that, you hear like a local band opening for like an act coming through your town, and everyone, like, there's a crowd there watching it, but no one's really engaged, everyone's talking, and the band, who might be very good, is just up there playing. They're not really engaging the listeners or the audience, and that's exactly what British Sea Power is doing wrong on Machineries of Joy. They're not engaging us listeners as much as they could, and there's different ways that you can attack that. I think, the last two tracks on this album, A Light Above Descending and When a Warm Wind Blows Through the Grass, I feel like especially the closing track is very, kind of much more of a serious, emotional track, that, you end with a more emotional, some of the most emotion on the album is at the very last two tracks. Well, why not shift that around and arrange these songs in a way that evokes the emotion early, so that you actually feel justified, and the listener feels like, okay, when the vocalist is really kind of being out there and crazy and dynamic and very, very accentuating his vocals, I feel like that would actually enhance the listening experience, then other than just being like, wow, this is just this guy doing his thing, and it kind of sounds cool sometimes. The other thing is that I don't particularly think, I've never been a big fan of British Sea Power's vocals. I just don't feel like they're that strong. I mean, they're not writing catchy vocal parts, and there's really not
I agree with that.
There's really not good tone or it's just not that high quality of a vocal melody, and I think that draws away from British Sea Power's music as a whole. You can have all these lush instrumentals, but it's just like what we say with metal music, is that if you're going to incorporate vocals, it needs to add value, and if it's not adding a ton of value, then just pull back. Just don't have the vocals and focus on your strengths. Focus on the songwriting.
And I thought that the instrumentals were great, but then when the vocals would come in, it's like all the attention was being funneled to the vocals, which ended up being kind of the weaker part. And so that just made it kind of lopsided for me, and I didn't love it as much as I knew I could. I did still like this album all right overall, but I just think about those things that they could have just honed a little bit, and it would have just been so much better.
Yeah, this is to me a slight step down from some of British Sea Power's previous work, specifically Valhalla Dance Hall, of what we reviewed in 2011. I'm going to go 70 on this one.
I'm going to go 68.
Cool. So upper 60s, that means that we like this album, but there were some problems with it causing us from really thinking that this was a solid release in 2013. What did you guys think of Machineries of Joy? Let us know at www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let us know what albums from 2013 you're into right now and you'd love to see VIMTV review. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.
Form of warm distortion.